with that said, I am very excited and honored to introduce this next panel of experts that really need no introduction, but I'm going to introduce them anyways. For years, I think we have been feeling and seeing one-time giving fluctuate. Some years it's up, many years it's down. There's lots of inconsistency around retention of one-time gifts. And it leaves us constantly guessing, like, what's next? What do we do? But in the middle of all of this uncertainty is the rise of monthly giving. It's kind of been quiet. It doesn't nearly get as much buzz as sometimes the fear things do, but there's so much positivity around monthly giving. And so, how do you bring in loyal monthly donors who stick around? What's actually working right now in this moment that we're in, from digital ads to emerging channels? How do you keep them engaged for the long haul? There's amazing stats. I mean, I'm one of them. I've been a monthly donor for 5 years for an organization, so that monthly giving really becomes a core fundraising stream and focus and community for your organization. So that is exactly what this panel is going to uncover for you today. So leading the conversation is Trista Murphy from MissionWired. She is the SVP on MissionWired's nonprofit leadership team. She works to drive best-in-class, audience-first fundraising strategies that deliver record-breaking results for world-changing missions. I mean, let's go. And she's joined by two powerhouse fundraising leaders, Nicole from Save the Children. Nicole is the managing director of supporter acquisition. And I want to note here, I think we are going to see a big rising trend in sustainer roles in organizations. So just going to note that. Director of Supporter Acquisition at Save the Children. She leads a talented team of marketing and fundraising professionals. And since joining in 2012, Nicole has been instrumental in driving growth across all channels with a special focus on sustainer acquisition. I am so excited for this conversation. She is pivotal in launching their DRTV. Very excited to talk about this. And a new unrestricted giving product in 2014. She's launched face-to-face fundraising and introducing the Team Tomorrow Sustainer product in 2022, which I also can't wait to hear about. And Evan Johnson from Project Hope. He is the Senior Director of Mass Marketing and Fundraising. He oversees a holistic fundraising program across online, offline, P2P, sustainers, and mid-level giving. He's been working in this industry for over 15 years, has a huge passion, the love of acquisition, creativity, data. Evan, you are a person of my own heart and does it with a sense of humor, love of fundraising, and a donor-first mindset. This amazing panel is brought to us by the team at MissionWired. They are a team that understands what it takes to cut through the noise and drive real sustainable growth. So I think we're all here to learn about how to do that. So welcome, panelists, to the stage. Thank you so much for being here with us. Trista, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Dana. Hi, everyone. We're really excited to be here today, and we're really looking forward to discussing monthly giving with you all. It's been an exciting afternoon so far. I think I've learned more this afternoon than I have in my entire career, so that says a lot. As Dana said, I'm Trista Murphy. I'm an SVP here at MissionWired. For those of you that don't know, MissionWired is an integrated direct marketing agency that works with missions and organizations to tell big, ambitious stories. We were founded and continue to operate on innovation, whether it's our donor engagement tool, Sign for Good, or maybe you just heard about it in the expo room. Our acquisition source is a decade, the digital co-op, our decades of experience have raised more than $4.5 billion for our partners. And that's exactly what motivates us to be here today. I'm joined by two incredible, fundraising powerhouses, Nicole Clemente and Evan Johnson, and I'll give them a second to introduce themselves. Nicole, you want to say hi and anything about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Trista. As Dana and Trista said, I'm Nicole Clemente. I work at Save the Children. I've been at Save for going on 13 years, unbelievably. Leading our supporter acquisition team, I help drive our growth in not just Sustainer now, but also our one-time giving, lead gen, and paid digital channels. But as Dana said in intro, I've had a long-standing relationship with Sustainer acquisition for many of my years here at Save the Children.
Thanks, Nicole. Evan, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. And oh gosh, I forgot that I had the whole sense of humor thing in my bio, so I kind of increased expectations there, didn't I, for this session? So
You have to be
I'm
funny. You have to tell jokes
I
now.
know. Okay, gotta be on my game here. So I am the senior director of mass market fundraising at Project Hope. I've been here at Project Hope since 2018. Prior to that, I was at another international organization, Mercy Corps, for 8 years, and actually got my start at a direct mail agency as well before that. So I'm excited to be here with all of you today to talk about monthly giving.
Thank you both. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the good stuff because we don't have very much time together this afternoon, which is discussing and mastering the art of acquiring and retaining. I think it's important. You can't just acquire, you also have to retain monthly giving. I know Evan and Nicole have some great and incredible advice to share with you all today. But before we jump in, I just want to acknowledge the tremendous turmoil and ever-changing news cycle that we've been in over the last several weeks. I think, there has never been a time that has impacted nonprofits more. And if I know one thing about nonprofits and the fundraisers that fuel them, it's that we are a resilient bunch. And I know that we will make it through on the other side of this, just as we have many times before. The sand beneath our feet is constantly shifting, and I know that we're all searching for answers. I wanted to kind of open up the conversation. Nicole, I know leading up to our conversation today, you and I had talked about kind of some things that Save is doing in their fundraising approach in light of the news that's come out the last few weeks. Anything you want to share with the group?
Yeah, great. I think what we know now is that our mass market fundraising is as important as ever, and as is our sustainer acquisition, as it being a longer term revenue growth area. So we're really focusing and leaning in there and front loading some of our sustainer acquisition sources where we can to ensure that we're getting revenue up front. We'll talk a bit about this during this conversation, but and even within the sustainer approach and sustainer acquisition, just diversifying even when the payments come in. So leveraging an annual or non-monthly approach. So I know we have a little bit more to speak to on that later, but just taking some different approaches to front load and focus on those annuals and non-monthly gifts is kind of where we are now.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think this conversation is perfectly timed. I think we're going to start to see a rise of the sustaining giving, right? The whole point of sustaining monthly giving is that it's sustaining revenue. It powers organizations. It keeps missions driving forward. So let's talk about it. When did your organization get serious about acquiring sustaining gifts, monthly gifts? And kind of what did that look like? What did launch look like? How did you go about it? Tell us all the details. Evan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great time when I joined Project Hope. It was a year into a big emphasis at the time of investment and reinvigorating the entire direct marketing program, and Sustainers was identified as part of that as a critical part of the growth for the long term. And so, coming in, it was a good opportunity to be serious about building up all of our channels, but also really trying to get to a point where we could shift a lot more of our focus and attention over to weigh a lot more on building a sustaining program. And also just huge buy-in from leadership at the time, and still is, on getting into all of the channels that we can that allow for us to not just do direct response, but really focus on investing in monthly giving. So that at the time was pre-COVID. So we actually had identified face-to-face canvassing, obviously is a big, important channel. But it also included just really a look at a full mix from digital acquisition and conversion, telemarketing conversion, mail, and just gradually scaling that up and measuring it over time. And so that's the foundation that we started, a serious investment across the board.
Thanks, Evan. And Nicole, how about Save?
Save the Children has a long-standing program around sustainer giving. We started with child sponsorship, which has been around for decades and decades. And I think the real shift occurred for us at Save the Children in 2014 when we, similar to Evan, we're looking at like our revenue sources and our unrestricted growth and looking to invest there. So in 2014, we got some investment to launch a new unrestricted monthly giving product. And having had success in the child sponsorship space, we had a lot to kind of lean back on in terms of best practices. So we were able to launch with DRTV and face-to-face and other channels as well. Following that, in 2022, we actually shifted again and we relaunched an unrestricted giving product called Team Tomorrow, which you'll see represented here in my coffee mug. And that approach, that monthly giving program is really focused on issues. It's kind of giving the donor a little bit more choice around what their communications entail. And it's something that we launched in partnership with agencies that provided some research and kind of how society is sort of shifting and donors are shifting and what they're interested in. So that we've had a few iterations of when we got serious about sustainer giving, but I think we've been serious about it for quite some time.
Amazing. How are you ensuring kind of like diversification of your channels, and kind of where have you seen success in that diversification? Nicole, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, diversification is very important. And I think that we found that even more so during COVID. So during that period when we were heavily invested in face-to-face as a really strong channel for sustainer giving. And particularly during COVID, when we had to shut down, as many of us did in the face-to-face space, we saw that we weren't as diversified as we wanted to be. So we started to invest a little bit differently, put some more towards digital and DRTV. And those that were in the space at the time, we all did that. We all made that shift. And it was one that we haven't really pulled back on yet because it has been successful. So I think the critical thing is looking at the number of donors, the investment, and kind of balancing across the whole portfolio to ensure that you have the diversification that still leads to the goals that you're looking for from your sustainer program.
Great. We're getting some questions in the chat. I'm watching them come in. Nicole, could you give a little bit of context on the difference between unrestricted and restricted and what that means for Save the Children?
Yeah, sure. So our child sponsorship program was what was a restricted funding program. So it was we were funding programs that child sponsorship. We had child sponsorship programs across the world. Unrestricted is really revenue that comes in that we can leverage wherever is needed. So, for example, if there are emergency or a natural disaster in Kentucky, we can respond to that natural disaster versus being kind of restricted to those areas where child sponsorship has programs. So that's why there is an important shift in the way that we wanted to operate, because we wanted that unrestricted revenue really gives us a lot of flexibility in how we can use those funds to help children where the need is greatest.
Yeah, that's great. And Evan, when you started talking about how you launched sustaining giving at Project Hope, I have the same question for you on diversification. How did you ensure you're being diverse in the sources that you acquired and the types of donors that you acquired, and what kind of channels did you see success in early on?
Yeah, I mean, this is where again, just like the fact that my team and we just oversee the full spectrum of direct marketing. That's a big help in terms of how the team is structured, because it allows us to be, I guess, like I had the benefit of some time to write this down after you were answering this question. So I would say there's like 4 things that come to mind. Being able to have this holistic view of all the channels and ownership, and then team members now like focused on those. And then having a fluid investment, which is like having a finance structure and ability to track and maintain moving money around based on like how things are working, instead of just having you have to sit with this budget and a comfort among like your direct mail person and your digital person and all of that, to be okay with like moving one-time acquisition budget and things like that if something's doing well, or just like changing up the buckets for sustainers. Another one is adaptability, which is just being able to like adjust in the moment if something is suddenly doing really well, and being able to push it and maybe figure out how you pay for it later and pull from later. And then the measurement, I think I found like multiple ways to look at something. is important. There's no perfect instrument. And so like
Yeah,
maybe there's an internal resource and out external resource to like build your models and projections in and be able to keep an eye on how things are going.
that's great. And then talking about that, it's a great segue into my last question on scale building and scaling a sustainer program. But when you're thinking about KPIs, what are those KPIs that you're watching? And Evan, I'm going to go to you first and give Nicole the benefit of writing something down while you answer this question.
Thank you.
Happy to help. So for the KPIs, and actually Nicole helped me because before this, Nicole was first in writing down and sharing some of like her prep work, so that helped inspire me. So full credit to you. For KPIs, I think the biggest thing that we're focused on is, especially as we're growing, is scale first and foremost. Where can we really scale? And then balancing like the attrition rates within that scale. So it's like kind of like a finding like it's a tricky thing with sustainer and you're growing. You want to like balance the value, the break even points of your investments. But there's only like, face to face, it's easy because it's like you get what you pay for. You can scale as big as you want, you know exactly what you're going to get. And then it's just hitting those attrition rates and optimizing the operations. But it's low retention, high attrition, but does have good value for us. And then digital, it's like the golden monthly donors are digital, strong retention, low attrition, high value, but hard to scale. So the other like KPI is within all of these is figuring out like your cost per acquisition for all of these, your value, your attrition rates, and your break even point, so that you can maximize whatever budgets you've got over time.
Nicole, anything to add or change there? Anything different Save's doing?
I would say we're pretty along the same lines. Our primary KPI that we're looking at is it's cost per acquisition, and like Evan said before, there are even varying ways that you can look at cost per acquisition, right, by channel. You can look at it with all costs included. You could look at just media costs. You can, so there are ways that you can kind of shift based on the channel, and I think that's important too because every channel is going to be a little bit different. And face to face, you have a cost per acquisition with clawbacks sometimes with your vendor. Sometimes you don't have clawbacks. In DRTV, you have a media cost per acquisition you can look at. You can look at it all in with creative costs. So it's just ensuring that what you're looking at when you're optimizing at the channel level is really useful and actionable at the channel level. And then you have your metrics that are really looking at the program as a whole to say, like, what is our goal cost per acquisition? And then how do we get to that based on each of these channels that we have? What's the average gift we need for the right value we need to break even at the time that we want to break even? So it's really, for those of us in the sustainer world, it's a huge math equation and kind of actually a lot of fun to sort of back into those things, but it's very formulaic to get to really where you want to be in that acquisition space.
Thank you. I'm watching the chat. We're getting some feedback. I think there's lots of smaller orgs in the audience today, and there's lots of orgs who are wondering, like, how do you even get started? What's that first step that you take? And so I'm going to pivot away from our pre-planned questions here, team, and just ask the question, like, what, from your experience, you both have such tremendous experience in building a monthly giving program, in making sure that they're working and making sure that they're successful. What is a first step that each of you would recommend an organization take if they are looking to get serious about monthly giving? Nicole, we'll start with you.
Sure, and I'm going to steal one of Evan's notes from before because he sent this in advance. But it was a great one, and I was a little bummed I hadn't thought of it myself. But I think one of the most basic things that we did when we started our unrestricted program in 2014 was just on the website defaulting to monthly, and it was just that simple shift that resulted in a huge uptick in monthly giving. And a lot of organizations might be thinking like, but then my conversion, my revenue, like that hurts. You might have an impact there. But I think that's where it's really, really important to look at the lifetime value, because you'll see almost assuredly that defaulting to monthly is a great first step in a sustainer program.
Amazing. Evan?
Yeah, and we weren't the first one to default monthly, and I think Save's been a pioneer in that too. So And also, what you said earlier, I think is something that comes to mind, Trista, about like um, building a culture. Like first thing probably is like build a culture and comfort and business model. And you touched on this just previously, Nicole, within the organization, because yeah, monthly you're going to sacrifice immediate revenue to build future revenue. So first of all, it's like that'd be the first thing to do, is make sure everybody's on board with it, because then that can drive those decisions like defaulting monthly here, or where you're going to like actually focus on it. The other thing is like start with your file. So depending on your budget, it's more cost effective to just convert your current supporters to monthly as a starting point, and the channels where they are, whether they're in digital, if you have a budget for telemarketing, like all of those are like quick wins because they haven't been asked yet, and you just got to reach them in whatever way possible. And then once you've maximized that, then you can expand into like finding other ways to acquire people, either to then more cheaply acquire and convert, or direct acquire. And so that's some of the things that come to mind for me.
Can I just add back on because I've seen a couple chats just around the monthly default, and I recognize that some supporters, there might be some cancellations or people confused, et cetera. And I think that's something that we've grappled with 100% over the last 10 years since we've done this. And I think it takes partnership with your call center. It takes partnership with your CRO team to test things to ensure that you're not getting that first cancel rate. It takes partnership with your CRO team to ensure that the language is really clear that you're selecting a monthly gift. And all of those things together can minimize that. You will always have somebody say, I didn't mean to do monthly here. Can you cancel my gift? That's always going to happen. But there are definitely ways that you can mitigate that and ensure that you're not aggravating a bunch of people.
What's a CRO team? Is that like a donor relations team?
CRO's web optimization, conversion rate optimization. I just lost the acronym for a second there. But whoever's working on your web strategy, doing testing on donation forums, building your donation forums, that sort of thing.
Got it. Thank you both. I appreciated that pivot. I think, we've talked a little bit about launching a program, how to get started. I think the other thing, thinking as we're thinking about monthly giving programs, is it's not stagnant, right? We're constantly shifting, we're constantly responding to whatever is going on. I know both Project Hope and Save the Children are massive humanitarian aid organizations that are responding at a moment's notice in moments of crisis. I'd love to hear from you both a little bit about some innovations that you've made in your program as you've shifted, as the program's grown. You start with changing maybe that monthly giving ask on the website, defaulting there, and then you grow, right? Then you add in things like telemarketing and face-to-face and other places. What are some standout innovations that either of you can think of or think back on in your time since launching? And Evan, we'll start with you.
I would say like there's two parts to this. So like one is a comment I wrote down earlier, and this gives me a chance to say it, which is like part of like the innovation is, so like I'm a direct marketer. I started with direct mail, which has been very cautious, like test everything, risk averse. But over time, I've evolved into more of a risk taker. But monthly, like the sustaining programs, it's so like predictable and testable. But like to really grow and try like to figure out ways depending on budgets and stuff, I found like it's a balance of testing, but also like instinct and taking and just going for it and seeing what happens. So like that, you kind of just like, that's been our approach. Because sometimes like you could be the one with the first idea, nobody's ever tried it, and you just
Yeah.
kind of, and maybe like testing it isn't going to get you anything useful, just go for it. So that's kind of like my new mindset. The other, yeah, for innovation, things that we've tried to help set the stage on that is like trying to find unique offers or tactics. I think it makes a difference. And that's like people innovating to offer the monthly toggle on donation forms or defaulting
Mm-hmm.
monthly. And we implemented all that. It could be a platform. I saw mentions of Fundraise Up. We're switching to that. We're in the moment of switching to Fundraise Up right now, which should increase our monthly giving. And then, yeah, like new channels. We've tried CTV. We're looking at CTV as a new channel. And The other thing is, I stole this from you, Nicole, but we found with our canvassing program that we're not just sticking with the monthly ask, but we're seeing a lot of interest in quarterly or annual asks,
Hmm.
and those people are sticking around, and they're at just as high a value as becoming monthly. And so we want to take that and try it out in digital and other ways. And now we're not even thinking of calling it a monthly giving program, but more of a sustaining program. You're not a monthly donor, but a sustaining donor. So we can really explore a funneled approach of like first this, then this, instead of only monthly.
That's amazing. Nicole?
Yes, couldn't agree more on the non-monthly front. That's been an area where we've definitely seen growth and success, and even higher value than our monthly donor. So that we're also looking into testing in other channels as well. Just a couple of things to add. In terms of other channels, connected TV is something that we've been testing, as well as mobile, and just a little bit more emphasis on SMS. We've seen a lot more success in SMS in the last few years, and it's really just as simple as even just putting the ask out there in SMS, because it's just not as crowded as email can be.
Mhm.
Just looking at some of the chat service questions around match and premium, and I just wanted to address, because for Save the Children, that has both match and premium have been significant parts of our program. Since the start, we have the famous tote bag premium, which lots of people love, which is on our DRTV ads. We've tested in various channels, and we also have a match that's pretty ongoing that we leverage for our sustainer gifts. We have one type of match that can be matched on the first gift, and we have one that's matched for sort of the lifetime of the gift. But those are definitely critical pieces of our program. And then the last I'll say, just in terms of innovation and the approach that we took for the launch of Team Tomorrow, which was in 2022, it really was it was a big innovative moment for us. It was a risk. We took this risk to focus on kind of the community approach, more of like, let's brand it Team Tomorrow. Let's bring people around this concept, and where we can focus on these specific issues. It has worked really well in canvassing and face-to-face to have like these specific issue areas to focus in on. But it also gives us really a platform to have a community around Team Tomorrow. So we're still relatively new in how that is performing, but that certainly was the intent, was to create a community around our new Team Tomorrow product.
That's amazing. We've got 5 minutes left, which is so hard to believe. This time has flown by. It's good when you're with friends. Let's pivot to a second to talk about maintaining sustainers, right? It's one thing to acquire them. It's another thing entirely to make sure that you're keeping them. And that's part of acquiring sustainers, right? Excuse me. So Nicole, can you talk a little bit about maybe some target retention metrics that you think through, how Save the Children approaches retention, and what kind of the most important thing on your mind is when you're thinking through that?
Yes, certainly. And I will caveat with, I've been in acquisition my whole career here at Save, so I'm certainly leaning towards that direction. But you can influence retention through acquisition, which is something that I strive to do all the time. So there are, digital platforms. What digital platforms or channels are you using can inform how your retention performs. In canvassing, you targeting donors who are over 30 tend to result in a higher average gift, higher retention. Higher average gift sometimes results in higher retention. So there are certainly levers on the acquisition side that we're pulling all the time to ensure that retention on the back end and value on the back end is maximized as well. I think some of the basics that we will launch when it comes to a new program is certainly a dedicated welcome series, including some that will include email, includes SMS, includes direct mail. We try to create kind of a personal connection with Save the Children, so it really feels like, again, that community that we're bringing that forward. Introducing some of the other Team Tomorrow donors to the new Team Tomorrow donors, and to show that sort of donor testimonial piece. And again, emphasizing the community, I think is really important. And we do have some restrictions when it comes to asks for our sustainer donors as well. I think that's important to protect them a bit. So we do have those business rules in place, so we're not overstepping with these very valuable donors.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, Evan, lightning round. Project Hope, retention,
Ooh, lightning
sustainers.
round. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Like the starting point is to understand like what is your actual like maximum retention rates, because every channel of acquisition definitely like has their different ones, and eventually you're going to get them to the where they all equalize. But I believe like the best retention strategies is like treat your sustaining donors with like pure transparency and good customer service, all the way to like let them make it easy for them to cancel. You never know if they want to come back as a sustainer later, and they've felt that glow of being listened to, and keep them updated on their support. Don't be afraid to talk to them, even though they're becoming a monthly or sustaining donor. And I really like treating them like a community. And what that looks like is like access, like they're hearing from everybody in the organization and it's genuine. And then, like Nicole said, get proper welcome streams set up, donor journeys, a communication touchpoint matrix, cultivation streams, anniversary touch points, all of that set up, and just really understand them. And that will show through. And then, hopefully keep them engaged and loyal.
Thanks, Evan. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Evan. This was an amazing conversation. I know we had much more to get to, but I think we've reached our time.
Thank you so much, Nicole, Evan, Trista. Honestly, this has brought up so many things for me. I wrote so many notes to collectively go over, and it's so powerful. I think one of the main things that you all mentioned, and Trista, you touched upon, thank you, in the chat, was around the KPIs mentioned. And I think part of that problem is most of nonprofit tech platforms do not naturally have these things ingrained natively into their platforms. They have to be customly built lots of times by larger organizations that have the ability to do so. So community together, every time I am on a call, I am always asking, like, is this going to be added? Is this going to be added like to the main dashboard? These metrics that we're talking about need to be immediately accessible on a dashboard when you log in, because if we are going to largely focus on the importance of sustainable giving in our sector, we need to have easy access to our retention, to these acquisition numbers, to different channels and what they result, because that only makes us smarter. And if we can, to the point of so many of you were talking about, and I think Evan had talked about this with leadership buy-in, is if you're able to state data points to leadership about what certain channels are bringing in for sustainer growth, and that retention rate is in that 80-90% range, there's no question they're going to be like, of course, here's another 50 grand for that face-to-face campaign. Sure, go ahead and take this, because we're seeing an incredible return on investment. And these people are our biggest supporters that are giving to us over and over again. So please take this as, this is one thing I just wanted to mark. And I'm going to go into a couple others and I'll let you all go with your time. But is to, if we can collectively reach out to the platforms that you currently work with, when you're having conversations, when you're on these sales calls, ask them if they have these metrics, because sustainability and building a sustainer program is so important to you. I also wanted to focus really quick before I bring on Ricardo and Abby, and I do not want to take away from their time, is this concept of the default to the monthly form. 1000% this should happen. So if you remember, if you were here for the monthly giving summit last year, Aria from Daily Giving, they have over 25,000, I think, recurring donors now. They only ask for recurring gifts, and one time is the minority. And if we're worried about the ethicalness of that, it's a mindset shift. The mindset shift is our language talking about why sustainability matters so much to our mission? A one-time gift is going to get us here this month. That's great. But the people who are in it, the reason I give to 5 organizations as a recurring donor is because I believe in the long-term vision of that organization, not what they're just doing tomorrow or this month. I want them to end the thing they're working on. And I get so passionate about this because I'm passionate about the causes I give to. And so if you are communicating that and you are transparent about that need and that desire, there is no question that they will be excited to give to you. And for those that don't read directions, because some of us don't when we're giving and we're just excited, literally, I looked this up when we were talking. It's on page 120 of my book, is this mindset shift that says, here's the truth. Sometimes people make mistakes or decide they don't want to do monthly giving after all, and that's okay. By having a clear, dedicated site for your monthly giving program, you've done your due diligence in providing all the necessary information up front. I go on to talk about it, and I have a literal email that you can copy and paste, that if somebody does reach out that they didn't mean to give in that way, that it's a very nice way of saying, no problem. That's okay. We'd love for you to stick around if you want to, or if not, that's all right. So, okay,